Hello friends, so I'm Brew here, and today I have a video on the TVP T50/51, which is going to be a new Tier 10 Czech medium tank going into the European Tech Tree and World of Tanks Blitz. Now, I was looking for an idea on a video tonight, so I decided to go to the Tank Compare and Blitz Stars and just another day in a row, just give it a little check, see if the TVP T50/51 was in there yet, and yes, they finally have the stats posted. Now, just before I continue with the stats and the rest of this video, just keep in mind that none of these stats are final because this thing is still being tested, and it's definitely prone to changes. But I plan on giving you guys a quick preview just to give you guys an idea of how it's going to be performing in battle, and whether or not you guys should start saving some free XP or something like that for that line if any of you are interested in the line. So let's get on with it. So basically, I have the comparison here up against a couple other similar tanks like the Progetto M40 Mod 65 or the Leopard 1 and the AMX 30B. And I did the Leopard 1 and the AMX 30B because they're both decently large tanks with not that much armor. Now we're gonna ignore the manlet armor on the 30B because that's pretty good, but the hull is pretty bad, at least from what I know. But the TVP's armor is definitely going to be more like the Leopard one, so I'm going to be focusing a lot on that comparison whenever I'm talking about mobility or anything else like that. But I have the Progetto here because it's the closest thing to a tier 10 medium tank with an autoloader that we have in game so far. So we are going to start off with the firepower. Now immediately this tank has the lowest DPM out of everything I put into this comparison at 2,438 base DPM. But this is somewhat to be expected of a tier 10 autoloading vehicle, just considering that autoloaders are generally known for their burst damage and not the ability to just spit out firepower and keep shooting shot after shot and keep throwing out DPM. They're just known for coming around the corner and ruining you in a couple of seconds. Now the penetration at 242 base penetration, this is actually the lowest in the comparison, putting it underneath tanks like the Progetto, the Leopard 1, and the AMX 30B, because those are the tanks I put in the comparison. But it actually puts it below some other tanks, like for example the Vickers Light, which has 245 millimeters base penetration, as opposed to the 242 that the TVP has. So don't expect it to be able to penetrate a lot, and you're probably going to end up using the 290 millimeter penetration heat rounds that the TVP gets. Now onto the alpha damage of this tank. It's actually once again the lowest in the comparison at 310, but it actually gets a clip of 4 shells, giving the entire burst damage of this tank 1,240, which is really insane considering that it's going to be a medium tank and it has a 2.5 second injury clip. Don't know if I mentioned that already, I probably have. Which means that you're going to be able to get out that much damage in only 7.5 seconds. Now this is very similar to something like the K91, for example, that has 350 alpha but also a 3.5 second reload. So it unloads in 7 seconds, but it only has 3 shells, so it actually has a grand total of less clip damage. But it's also at tier 9, so it's not that big of a deal rather. And lastly, the shell velocity of the TVP T50/51, is 1,400 meters per second, which is faster than the Progetto, but just a little bit slower than the Leopard 1 and the AMX 30B, which both have 1,478 meters a second. And now on to the weapon handling. The TVP T50/51, that's a mouthful, I keep messing up on that, has 2.01 second aim time, and it is joint worst in this comparison with the AMX 30B, with the Progetto being at 1.8 and the Leopard being at 1.9, so they're able to aim in a lot faster. But since we're talking about points of seconds, it's probably not going to be super noticeable here, but you'll definitely notice a difference between the Progetto and the TVP, for example, because it's 0.2 seconds, which is a pretty big difference. And going down to dispersion here, the TVP actually has 0.336 dispersion, which is better than the Progetto, which has 0.345, but it's not nearly as good as the Leopard's 0.288 and it is just a little bit worse than the 0.326 on the AMX30B. So it's probably it's not going to have a super accurate gun, but considering its autoloader and the general play style of this tank, you're probably want to get a little bit close. You probably don't want to be sniping in this tank in general, and 0.336 accuracy is really nothing to scoff at. It's still pretty good, so it should be definitely enough to get the job done, but it's not going to have the same kind of gun handling as like a Leopard or a T62 with the 0.2 accuracy. Now onto the depression angles and the elevation angles. It has 8 degrees of gun depression, allowing it to be somewhat flexible on a ridgeline, but not nearly as much as the 9 degrees that the Progetto 65 has, or the 9 degrees that the Leopard 1 has, or even the 10 degrees that the AMX 30 has. So it's, once again, it's the lowest in this comparison, but 8 degrees is still good enough to be flexible on a ridgeline. It's not going to be an abysmal 5 or 6 like a lot of the high-tier Russian tanks are. Now on to the mobility here. According to the numbers here, it goes 60 forwards as the top speed, and actually 20 backwards, which isn't going to be as fast backwards as everything else in this comparison, because they all have a 23 backwards. But it's definitely enough, but it might feel just a little bit sluggish backwards compared to the others, so keep that in mind. Now the engine power is 820, but let's have a look at the weight just to get an idea of how it handles, because engine power, if you have a super heavy tank, 820 might not even be that much. So the specific horsepower on this is actually 20.69, which isn't bad for a medium. It is actually very close to what the Leopard 1 has at 20.93, and very similar to the AMX 30B at 20.82. So you're definitely going to be pretty mobile and able to zoom around the battlefield, very similar to a Leopard. Just keep in mind, you don't have that same top speed, both forwards and backwards. Now, there's another thing though that you have to keep in mind, and taking track resistances into account, the effective horsepower per ton is actually 20.7 on hard ground, unlike something like the Leopard 1, which has 34.9, almost 35 horsepower per ton on solid ground, and the AMX 30B also has 34 horsepower per ton on solid ground. So actually looking at this now, it's probably going to have mobility just a little bit more like the Progetto 65s, but that's still not going to be bad, but it's not going to be as zippy as I made it out to be a couple seconds ago. Sorry about that. So looking all the way down here, we're going to find that it actually is going to have 1,800 hit points, which is the lowest in this comparison once again. So this tank's going to be very similar to a Leopard 1, just 50 less health, so it's going to be even more fragile, but I think the armor is going to be just a tad more reliable on this, because going down to the armor on the tank, you'll see that it has 120 millimeters of turret armor as opposed to the 52 that the Leopard has. Now everything else in this comparison has 120, the Progetto and the AMX 30B both do. But if you take a look at the models on the other tanks, for example, you're going to notice that the TVP has kind of like a weird, I guess, upside down triangle shaped mantlet, and the rest of its turret is going to be, you know, that 120 that we were talking about. And a lot of things at tier 10 are going to be able to pin that. But towards the outside of the turret with that much armor, you might get a couple of troll bounces on the side if they miss, but there's a pretty big cupola, or like cupola area, that you could just shoot at, so you're probably not really going to be able to peek over a ridgeline without somebody slamming shells into your turret, unlike something like the Progetto, which actually has a pretty low profile turret. But the mantlet on the Progetto is really, really thin, if I recall, and the cheeks are pretty easy to hit, as long as the player isn't doing a good job of hiding them, which seems to happen a lot. But the AMX 30B, you know, its mantlet goes almost all the way across the turret. It has a very strong turret, but a disgusting giant like blister of a commander's hatch on there. It's like he has his own little watchtower or something. The TVP might be able to get a couple bounces off its turret, but definitely do not rely on it. So in closing, this thing's probably going to be a lot of fun. I'm definitely saving free XP for this one. As I said in my other video, I have a little bit of Czech lineage, and I'd love to pick this tank up just for that. but it also looks like it's going to be a lot of fun with those 4 rounds, each doing 310 damage to get the 1,240 clip damage potential. That's going to be insane at tier 10. But also keep in mind it's going to take 7.5 seconds to get that damage out, so it might be a little bit weird just trying to pump that damage out. I know it feels weird in my Defender, which has a 2-second enter clip, so it takes 6 seconds, but you know, or yeah, it takes 6 seconds. So that extra 1.5 seconds is going to make it feel like an eternity. But the damage it can put out, it's just going to be insane. And I'm definitely looking forward to that. And, you know, the mobility combined with all of that, it's going to be fun. And it's a really, especially the tier 9, they're both really good tanks on PC. So I'm definitely looking forward to picking this one up. I guess my video is over now. Thank you guys for watching. Please leave a like or a dislike if you don't like the video. Make sure to tell me why you didn't like it or why you did like it in the comments. I'm always trying to improve. And make sure to subscribe to my channel because I only have 23 subscribers at the moment of making this video, and I'm definitely looking to grow. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.